All right, guys, we got a real treat for you this time. So a lot of guys, they want to succeed. They want to do well. Whether they're, guys on this, this channel, like during college, or they don't have a job they don't like, and they want to have a better job. Other guys, they want to invest in things. They want to have money that they can put not just into expenses, but into other things. And other guys, they want freedom. So they might not want to live in one country. They might want to live in different countries. But today's episode is how a regular guy got all these things. And he's going to teach you basically the secrets. And this guy does not talk to people. He's very quiet, very unassuming. I've known for years, but you never really said anything. So this is really special. So if you're interested in those things and you want to change your life, I would recommend listening, because it's going to start with one thing and it's going to go to other things. So this thing's going to build on itself. This will answer so many questions for you that it's kind of amazing. This is the second time we recorded it, because the first time blew me away so much that I thought I didn't do the proper introduction, and also I didn't know how to guide it, because we could say we're talking about remote work. That's one way to say it. But this is so much more than that, because the remote work that you're doing gives you so many, it changes everything in your life, right? Yeah. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about, first thing is those three things I mentioned, right? Yeah. Are those true for you? I mean, how has it changed your life? Like, if you compare your life to some other guy's life, normal guy.
Yeah, so I mean, just like the ability to travel, go wherever I want, kind of pretty much do whatever hobby I want, like dress however I want, like, just you're kind of like totally free. You have like different experiences, like all this type of thing. It just totally changes your life.
Yeah, I can say this. Yeah. Like, I went overseas, so people would think, well, it's the same thing as you. Yeah. But it's a big difference, because when I went overseas, I was saving money, and I was going to countries that I didn't know anybody, and I had to figure everything out, like how to make money. Could I get a visa? Most countries, you can't get a visa. Yeah. Most countries, they won't give you a visa to work. And so that rules out like 99% of the world. That's why I ended up in Japan, because Japan was one of the countries that you could make money legally, get a visa, and then you could take that money and do whatever you want with it if you saved it, right? But there was only like a couple countries like Taiwan, Japan. Back then there was, what other countries? Couldn't do it in China, couldn't do it in India, couldn't do it. Maybe Singapore, You couldn't do it in Australia. In Australia, the only jobs were fruit pickers back then. Yeah. So there was nothing, right? So I chose Japan for a reason. Turned out to be a great decision. But you're talking about making over six figures, going to countries where it costs nothing to live. Yeah. And it's even better because you don't have to even look rich. Yeah. So you don't even have to have the kind of envy and jealousy that usually people have, right?
Yeah, well, that's, for me, like, that's one of the things that I do is, like, when I travel to a country, I always like to, like, live like a local, right? Because to me, like, that's where you get, like, the most, like, culture and experience and stuff, if you live like a local. Like, one thing I've always thought is, like, the poorest people in a society, like, they get to define the culture, right? Because they get to decide, like, what life is like every day. Like,
they go native.
Yeah.
They're already native.
Yeah, they're already like native in this area. Like, rich people, like, when you have a lot of money, like, it tends to push people away. Like, you go spend some time in like a nice resort and stuff, like, you're basically paying for people to, like, not be around. You're paying for all this space.
Exclusion.
Yeah, you're kind of excluding yourself from everybody else, and I don't like that.
And part of the reason is because when you're in one place, they know how rich you are. So you have to build a fortress, because otherwise you're going to get robbed. Whereas if you have money, you're making serious money, but nobody fucking knows. Yeah. And you wear a T-shirt and jeans or shorts and T-shirt, and you just don't look like you have money, and nobody will know. Like, your money just comes in on the internet, and you just put on your T-shirt, and your hippie jewelry or whatever you want to wear.
Well, that's great. It's like they'll see me like have some meetings and stuff, and they're like, I can tell people like I work online and stuff, but like nobody thinks that like it is what it is. It's very unassuming, very completely.
Right. They're going to assume, most people are going to assume that you're grinding by.
Yeah.
Like everybody else.
Yeah.
Because life is hard for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to assume that you're making, $10 an hour, $15 an hour, and then they won't be jealous. And that's a big advantage.
In America, you're judged by your car and your apparel. It's an easy indicator of status. So if you can somehow chameleon yourself by not having that. For instance, people in LA being jacked for their watches, and high-end stuff, high-end shops.
Yeah, it's when you're independent, like living in another country, it's kind of strange because for me, like, I don't care about impressing a bunch of people in a small town in northern India when I'm there. Whereas if I stay in California for too long, I'll start wanting to impress people too. You know what I mean? Like there's something different when you're in a country where you just don't know anybody. And so you just don't feel like you have to impress them or like it won't matter. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like they're not human in a way. Like I'm serious. It's like when you go to a new country, it's like you just don't get it. I remember when one of my friends died, and on the gravestone of his family, there was all these old guys' pictures, and I used to sleep in that room with those old guy pictures. It never bothered me, but now I realize that my friend's picture is there, and like a Japanese guy, and that totally changed the way I look at Japanese gravestones, because I didn't know anybody in Japan who had died. So somehow, like these old black and white pictures on these weird looking graves that don't look American, it just didn't seem real to me.
There was no attachment.
There was no attachment at all. I just kind of looked at it, kind of like I was looking at Benjamin Franklin or something. I knew he was a human, but at the same time, it's like, so when you're overseas and you're making money, you're really free. Like, mentally, you're mentally everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things when I'm traveling overseas is that, I'm working these meetings and I'm just like online, and I can just, I was staying in like, the crappiest of hostels, just working on my computer and like meeting, locals and doing this type of thing. And, I would just like, be one of them and like live in their shoes, like completely. And then that's how I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then just bank the money.
Yeah. And I'm saving a ton of money. Like, absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
I had a friend in Japan who made a lot of money teaching English. He was kind of like the same personality as you. His name was Mark. And one time he was real shy and like quiet, And one time he came up to me and he goes, I've saved $2 million, And he told me that, And I was like, no way, $2 million. Because he eats like real cheap food and stuff. And he doesn't care what you think about him. Yeah. I think he cuts his own hair. Nice. Yeah, he lived in Japan, and then finally he retired. He went to Central America, and he had by then he had more money, but he was even less. You could do much better than him, even over time, right? Because you're young, So So how? I want to say, like, when someone talks about remote work, we're talking about basically software. Yeah. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
Software.
Yeah.
So who can do this? Like, because my impression is going to be only like a guy who works at Google now. Here's what I think, because so you can break this down. Okay. So I have friends. I got a friend. He's in Mountain View. He works at Google. He makes big money. But my impression of remote work until I met you was that, okay, he's making $250,000. So he could get a job remote for say 125. So he could take a huge pay cut, and then the compromise is the company wouldn't have him in the office, so they'll pay him less because he's overseas. He's not providing as much value. So he could make half what he makes, but live in a cheap country, maybe have more girls, more freedom, and then he could save most of his salary. That's kind of what I thought before I met you. But that just sounds very far from the reality. So I want you to start breaking this down. Like,
okay, so you want to know like kind of like my situation?
Sure.
Okay, so like my situation personally is that I'm a software engineer. so it's very amenable to remote work because you're just delivering code. I got my first job at a startup. I personally, I only like working at startups. They're the most like exciting. There's the most like, type of, I love that energy, So I got my first job, and it was, I started working like, I was working really hard, 60 hours a week, like easily. And I did that. It takes me about 8 to 12 months to kind of like stabilize the system, kind of get everything the way I want it. And then after that, instead of like this like kind of like huge development push, it becomes more of a like maintenance thing. And so once it kind of transitions into like a maintenance thing, it's easier to coast. And so once that happens, then I can kind of really start reducing the amount of hours I work.
Just revising code.
Yeah, because like,
Are you doing constant pushes to get, or just like to make it seem busy?
Well, no, I don't. No, we don't. I don't do that. I don't pretend like, because the thing is that I make sure everybody knows that this is results oriented stuff, right? The stuff is either done or it's not. You're delivering value or not. Like this whole. That's the thing about startups, is that they're all about the results. Like nobody cares about looking busy like they do in bigger companies. They just don't. Like they just want the work done. Yeah. Anyway, so once you kind of like stabilize your setup and you kind of go into like this maintenance mode, you can like kind of slowly reduce your hours. You just start coming in, clocking in a little bit later, kind of just leaving a little bit earlier, and over time, people will have this impression of you as a hard worker because you sat there and you grinded through the hard parts, and that impression will last for a long time. And so once I start doing that, then I start like kind of freeing up my time. So after a year or so of doing that, my time gets free. I start noticing that like there's no more fires, because you do have to be an expert at whatever it is you're doing, right? Like there's no, you don't want to compromise on this one. Even for yourself, fuck the company. You don't want to be some like inexperienced like guy, even if you're not working hard, but eventually you'll set things up to be the way you want it, the way that's comfortable to you. You can get a lot done, and then you'll start realizing that you have more time. So you just kind of like after that, I kind of like chilled out for a while because it was a lot of work. And then a few months later, when I'm ready, I kind of just start perusing around, and like either I'll find another job even and kind of do the same thing.
So 2 six-figure jobs at the same time.
Yeah, 2 6-figure jobs at the same time. Do the exact same thing. Because except the second one, you're not going to be able to work 60 hours a week like you did at the first one. So you only work 40 hours a week at that one, and maybe you spend like 10 hours. The other one you're spending like 10 hours a week, and that's totally fine. And so you just do that for a while, and like eventually it'll take you a little bit longer, but eventually you'll kind of like stabilize that code base as well. Like you have both of these companies in like their maintenance modes, and then this is where the gold is, right? Because then you start like really reducing your hours on both of them. Yeah. So like some weeks I'll work some pretty hardcore hours, but on average it's gonna I work around like probably like 15 hours on average a week. Yeah.
For 2 companies.
Between both companies. Yeah.
Are there certain things you do so you document your code and revise it so it's really apparent, so people kind of get used to your code flow? And also, do you make sure that like both jobs are using the same stack, right? Are they both like Java? So like you can incorporate the same like fixes and same algorithms the same logic, right? Because the way the stack's designed and you can mimic it, right? So like, oh, I solved this problem last week, for company X, and now today I solved for company Y.
Okay, so so ideally, you want them to both be in the same like language. If you're doing software development, you probably want them to both be in the same language. Both of my companies are somewhat like related to real estate, and so that kind of helps as well, because you're like when it's time to work, you're always like you're thinking about one thing. You're not jumping from like real estate to like sports and like that whole like transition.
Same subject
It
matter.
gets a little bit more difficult to do. It kind of slows you down a little bit if you did that. But yeah, I mean, and then the other thing is that if you write in the same language, you're just developing more of an expertise in that language, and so like lessons that you learn in one, you can they directly transfer over. Yeah.
And this also applies to somebody like I work in tech as well. I'm more on the sysadmin migrating to DevOps side. So this conversation is, really special to me. So I would imagine, say for instance, for those starting for remote jobs, or they can start in tech support and then work for a web hosting company on the side. And so you learn how to basically use your network skills and your troubleshooting skills from company X, and you can apply it to company Y as well. Yeah,
absolutely. The thing is, any office job of any kind, you're gonna have downtime because think about all the if you did go into an office, think about all the time people spend like just chit chatting by the water cooler. They just waste a bunch of time.
Indeed.
And instead of just having all that time be, you're just wasting your life talking to people you don't care about. Like, you could be using that time for something valuable. Like, it's just, yeah.
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 So always use those last couple hours of your day.
Yeah.
Go on LinkedIn Learning, Linda. Oh, same thing. YouTube, and just study whatever you need to study to make your job better, or you're studying for your next job.
Yeah, like my first job was an entry level quality assurance tester. So I would just go through and other people would build some system, and I would go through and kind of click around and kind of describe my experience, did it work, did it not work, this was bad, whatever. And even in that job, what I found right away is that there was a lot of downtime where, if you just get your work done and then you're just kind of sitting there waiting for new work to be generated for you. And so what I did was I used that time to study. So if you have nothing else and you wanted to get into this as well, and very easy ways to just get any office job at all, even if you're going in, whatever, use all that downtime to learn a skill. You could learn graphic design, you could learn programming, you can learn sysadmin work, you could learn networking, whatever it is. And that's a great way to just, this is all in IT because this is what I know, but you could even learn some other skill, anything you want. Just don't sit in the office and waste all that valuable time. It's precious.
Quick question. So since we all kind of listen to similar content, it's perfect opportunity to listen to lectures and stuff while you're kind of doing your research and coding. You can do this. That's what I do as well. I listen to my best podcasts and do my best law reviews in the morning, or when I can juggle two things.
Yeah. I would say that sometimes I'll even listen to podcasts while I'm working, and just even if it's red pill stuff or just any kind of content that I'm interested in.
Yeah, dope.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so when we talked before, you said that because I think a lot of people are listening and they're not tech guys.
Yeah.
So they think obviously they would think this is totally irrelevant to me and impossible. Yeah. I could never get a remote job in software because I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not a computer
I'm
guy.
just a normal guy. I have a computer, but what could a normal guy do? What avenues would they have, or are there any avenues for a normal guy to get a remote job, where I could make, if someone could make some serious money while they're in Thailand, for example?
Well, I mean, it's
sure
a lot.
a lot of guys
It's a lot easier in software and IT, but
No,
there are
saying,
other things.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what if they wanted to do some really basic software stuff or something related to software, but they don't really have a bunch of skills right now?
Okay.
So they want to get into it.
Yeah. So
Well, what could they study? What type of things should they study? Where would they study? How long would it take? Is it realistic?
all right.
How much would they make when they did it?
So there's a couple different ways you can go. One way is kind of the way I said, where you just get any office job and just study your ass off in the downtime. That way, your education is subsidized by the company and you're getting paid for it, right? Another way you could go is you can go to a boot camp, right? And if you go to a boot camp, one of the ones you would want to look for is, you'd probably want to look for one of the one. And I haven't done the boot camp route, but if I was to do it, I would say go with a boot camp that has some kind of like income share agreement, because basically what they're doing is they're saying, we're not going to make money unless you get hired, and when you get hired, we're just going to take a cut of your first year's salary, or whatever. And to me, that just speaks volumes, because like they're putting their money where their mouth is. Like, we're going to train you and we're going to do a good job and you're going to make money, and now we're going to make money because of that. And the added benefit is that you can get into this with no money down, so you can just sign up. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how would you look for a course like that?
So
what would you Google?
Yeah, you could just Google like boot camp and then just look up like income share agreements. That way you can get started, no money down. You just,
would it be a coding boot camp or a software boot camp?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of, I haven't done this, but like you would browse around. There are tons of like different like coding boot camps that you can do.
Coding boot camp.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm sure there's other types of boot camps. I'm most familiar with like, I've worked with a lot of people that have gone through coding boot camps, and they speak highly of them. Because the thing is that I didn't even you don't even need to do that. That's just like kind of if you just need like a kick to get started. But you could learn all this stuff yourself. It's all available on the internet if you just want to like go out and build something. But it is nice to have like a kind of guided experience as well. That would like,
some people are starting from a space where they have no idea what they need to study, who to listen to.
Right.
So a boot camp is perfect because they can get in there and the guy says, this is going to be useful in the future. This language is popular.
Yeah.
And here's what you need to learn to get to the level where you can work for somebody.
Yeah, like for me, I always knew that like even from a young age I wanted to do software. Like, so that was always like, it was always like very clear to me. But like not everybody, grows up like that.
You studied Ruby on Rails, right?
Yeah, I studied Ruby. I've been doing Ruby for a long time. I like it because it a lot of like Ruby and Rails stuff like is startup companies, and so I love that startup energy. Like there's a lot of like opportunities for doing the types of things that I'm doing because in a lot of ways like working for a startup is really hardcore, actually, because startups, software consulting, and game development, I think, are like kind of like the most hardcore things you can do in this industry, because depending on like what the app is or whatever, like there's a lot of risk that the app will fail, and so everybody gets fired, right? But with that, you have like all these other types of opportunities. Like if you're the guy that like kind of that everybody acknowledges that like kind of built the spent a year or two like building the app from the ground up and makes the company a bunch of money, like they're gonna let you do whatever you want. Like they love you. Like you almost have like you have like tenure.
You're the golden boy.
Yeah, you're the golden child.
Golden child.
You can just do no wrong.
Well, one of my friends, he was one of the first 5 developers at Alibaba.
Yeah.
And so like he is like so respected by everybody.
Yeah.
And can go anywhere he wants, really.
Yeah. And if you think about it, if the company
that's a fucking unicorn, big time.
Yeah. And if the company that you're working at becomes some massive success, that's even better for you because now you can. They're gonna share that. You're gonna double your salary just in that company and or whatever. Like
spoils of war. Share,
they're just gonna know. Like they'll know that you did a lot for them and.
I think one important thing for these guys, for you, if you're listening, to know is that this is a very weird industry. Here's what I see. I know a lot of friends, and I've obviously consulted a lot of companies, and I headhunted, where the guy that was doing the hiring, the guy in charge of finding you, right? He actually didn't know anything about IT.
Yeah.
So it's a weird position where you got this guy with, there's all this investor money.
Yeah.
Billions and trillions. There's money everywhere in startups. People just want the next Facebook, right? So the money is there, and the founder, once he's there, he's raised the money successfully with the business plan. So now he's hiring some of his most important people, but he literally doesn't know how to code. So the guy who's hiring you. So it's like, how good can you interview? And then once you're in, how fast can you learn and problem solve?
Yeah.
So that you can do it, whether, and some of the guys even outsource some of their work to other people, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very funny business.
That's build an airplane as you fly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really interesting point because like, you absolutely have to interview well. It's one of those things that, even though, you're some like programmer and you're probably introverted or whatever, you have to be social and likable at least. You don't have to be so like, extroverted and out there, but you have to interview well. Like, I think that, oh man, I forgot to say something interesting.
While you're thinking, the thing about startups is they're very small. So, like you don't want to work with somebody who's really weird. Right. You want someone normal person because you're going to talk to them all day.
Yeah. And the thing with startups is that like, you want to be able to like, you just get a sense of like what it is that, the person who hired you wants, right? It's really important if you're going to do this type of thing and like try to make all this money without working hard, is that you got to narrow down exactly what the most important things are. And this is absolutely crucial because what ends up happening at every company is that people will ask for stuff and, it is a problem that should be solved. But the thing is that it's a problem that if it wasn't solved in the next year or 2 years or 5 years, nobody really cares that much. And so a lot of people get stuck solving these like kind of worthless problems that, it would be nice, I guess, if I had a foot rub every day at the end of the day. But like, I don't need that, like that's not the most important thing. So if you can kind of think about the business, what it is that people want, and just only do the most important things, you just absolutely cut most of like the crap work out.
You pick and choose your battles wisely.
Yeah.
You're not fighting the long war. You're just the small skirmishes that break out.
Yeah. And people trust you more.
As a position, as the non-IT guy, I can tell you this for sure. When I hire people, I'll give them, especially if I hired like a vice president for my company once, and I gave him a big list of everything I wanted done, right? Because I'm thinking, well, what could he do? Yeah. What would be good to be done? Yeah. So I told him all this stuff. But you know what? What I really wanted him to do is bring in new clients and place people with those clients. Yeah. So make contracts, and then, those contracts are worth like $30,000 to $40,000 each, right? Yeah. So I wanted him to find new clients where they're looking for like, say, 100 people. And then he starts putting people in that company. Yeah. And then everything else that I told him,
it was just busy work.
It was stuff that I wanted done. Like I wanted a database done. I wanted him to kind of enter all this data into my database. I wanted him to train the other guys. I wanted him to, there was so many things that I would have really liked him to do. But the bottom line is, the absolute bottom line, if that motherfucker could bring in clients,
you don't care,
and send people over there, I would shut the fuck up about everything else.
Yeah.
Seriously, the office could be a mess. He could never train the new guy. The database never got off the ground. He didn't, by the way. And nobody ever put the data in the computer. Yeah. It was all paper. Yeah. But it didn't matter that much. As long as we're making money, then I can take that money and I can use it to grow the company, which is what I wanted to do. So it's like really funny because as an owner or whatever, you're gonna tell you a lot of stuff. But what I really want is I want a trustworthy guy who can see through everything and do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, the people I work with, they're also smart guys. And after a while, like they kind of sort of, they never say this. Not once has anybody said this, but they kind of sort of realize that I'm not doing that much, but they also know that like they can trust me to like get all the important things done. And by then, like I've kind of like established this like precedent that like I'm not going to do that much, but like what you need done, it's there. It's 100% it's there.
And it's going to be quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's crucial. 'Cause otherwise, like, they're just going to give you busy work, and you're just going to forever be, you know, digging holes and filling them back up again.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's so important.
Yeah.
God, I cannot tell you how important that is to a business owner.
Yeah.
Is you really don't want a yes man.
Yeah.
You want a guy who
Well,
he knows your business from the IT side.
I will say yes to all work, but I already know that I'm not actually going to do it.
Well, that's perfect. That's perfect. Because that makes me happy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he said yes.
You have to have
Yeah.
a social intelligence too.
Yeah,
Never
yeah.
forget that.
Yeah. It's a business is a funny thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're getting the main stuff done. And the other thing too, which you didn't say, which I think is important, is when you build a system, say an IT system. If let's say that you built the system.
Okay.
So I'm an owner. Now I know you're not working very hard anymore.
Yeah.
But everything that needs to be done is done. Things are going smoothly. The reason why I would never fire you, even if I knew you were slacking off, is because you built the system.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when somebody builds, imagine a room full of wires going everywhere.
Yeah.
And so the guy who built it, he can just go in there and he knows which one. He cuts the yellow wire, he attaches the purple, everything's fixed, right? Whereas you hire a new guy, he has to go in, spend months trying to figure out what the fuck that guy did. He might burn a bunch of things out while he's reattaching things. So at the end of the day, as a business owner, nobody is stupid enough to fire you and then hire a cheap guy to maintain it. So he's just going to keep you.
Yeah.
And even though he knows you're not working that hard, he's not that happy about that. But things are still going fine. And he knows that replacing you is never going to be good.
Yeah, and so I would know in advance.
He needs you.
I would know way in advance if they were planning on doing that. Because any smart business owner, if they did want to replace me, they would just hire another developer and have them work with me. And in the time that it takes me to train them, in the several months that it takes me to train them, I can easily find something else. Easily. So, like, I'm pretty solid, like, no matter what happens.
Right.
And I'm aware enough as to what's going on in the company. And since I have access to the systems, I know if they're doing well or not. If if a lot of data is getting pushed through, they're doing well. If they're making a lot of sales, I have access to these dashboards and stuff. So I have very, very intimate knowledge of the company, and I could just foresee. So, like, yeah, if I know that they're making a bunch of sales, they're making a bunch of money, I'm slacking off. They don't care. They can pay it. They can afford it genuinely and without any worries.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm here, and Bank is here.
Yeah.
Now, both of us are just normal guys, right? Yeah, Bank, did you go to school, college?
Yeah.
I dropped out.
He dropped out of college. I went to college, but I didn't study software, right? So let's just give you a challenge. Like, let's say you were going to find the right route for me to take if I was going to do a software, remote job and bank. So why don't you do bank first? And why don't you come on over here? Okay, so tell a little bit about yourself, who you are, just real quick. What would you want to do, just business-wise?
Hi, my name is Bank. I've been teaching myself software development for the past 2 years now, but I never actually applied to different jobs because I would not know what to show for it because most of my code is in private repos, and I don't think it's at the point where it's considered pushable to production. But I do have production code running, but I look at it, it could be a lot better. So I want to know how would I go about fixing my problems in order to get that first job.
All right. When I'm looking for a job, I just apply everywhere. Even with like 6 years of experience, I'll apply for a senior position, and I'll apply as an intern in 5 minutes later. And the thing you have to understand is that, like Paul was saying earlier, these people that are hiring, the guy who spends, like the recruiter or whatever for the company, they don't actually know that much about technology. So it's so much more important to interview well, because the honest truth is that if I was to hire somebody, I would want to like them first, and then I would be willing to just train them to teach them whatever they need to know, whatever gaps they're missing. And this is how they think. They're looking for enthusiasm, that you're socially intelligent, that you're likable, because the honest truth is that the people around you are going to spend they're thinking in their minds, I'm going to spend 40 hours of my life every week sitting next to this guy. I got to like him. There's just no way around it. And if he's missing whatever he's missing, I don't even mind teaching him. It's a lot easier to teach technology than it is social skills, by far. Whereas if I had some super high quality engineer and he was a huge asshole, nothing really makes up for that. Yeah. So there's a lot of interviews that I've been in where they'll even blatantly, because I love interviews. I go on interviews just for fun. Honestly, they're so fun.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That's how you keep your interview skills fresh. Yeah. Even if you have a job, you should be interviewing at least 3 times every few months.
Well, yeah, I just do it for fun because it's one of the only times that I can talk about the stuff that I'm working on and people are genuinely interested, because I can't go to a party and talk about any of my work. Nobody cares, and that's fine.
Doesn't give them wood. That's
fine. I'm not gonna put them through that. So I go to interviews and I tell them, they're really interested in all the little details and stuff, and so I can go on and on. But yeah. So the thing is that just don't worry about that. You have code that's running. Just show it to them. All they want to see is that you present a piece of code. You understand it. You can walk them through what you did. You maybe describe why you made the decisions that you did. They'll even a lot of times they'll even give you tips if I did it, I would do it this way or that way or whatever. And it's not about it's so much more of an attitude is so much more important than raw code that you've written. You've been doing it for 2 years, you can already find a job. Yeah. No doubt.
So let's do this. Yeah. So you have a company that's massive. Okay, you are the hiring director for Microsoft. Okay, global. Okay. So you have hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs, and we got Bank right here with his skills, and you want to find out where he would fit and if you could give him a job. What would you ask him? And then Bank, I want you to answer, and then I want you to give him a theoretical job. You're going to work in this department. Here's what you're going to have to work on. Okay. Here's your project. Here's what we want you to learn in the future. Like a realistic thing, if you could imagine that. Is that possible? That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So, I know Bank's been writing Elixir, right? And so, in a large company like Microsoft, in these larger companies, they kind of write a little bit of every language. So most likely there's some team doing that, or most likely they'll try to push you into what they're trying to hire for specifically. Whoever you end up talking to, that specific guy will try to push you into because they just want to fill their role. They don't really care, as long as their role is filled. But so they'll kind of guide you to where they want you to be, just to satisfy their stuff. But if you can just push back and just find what it is that you're most interested in, you're just that passion of when you interview and stuff, that's just going to show, and that's a very attractive thing to
Sure, but what job would you what would you ask him about Elixir? What team would you maybe put him on? Doing what kind of project?
And
then what would you want to know from him?
Interview questions
he can
and stuff.
Actually do the job, and what would the project?
Oh, so
just make something up.
Yeah, I would do the standard thing that everybody does. Really, it would be mostly about personality. I would ask him about some technical questions about specifics on the language that you've written in. Sometimes as an interviewer, I haven't written you've probably written more Elixir than me, because I've only kind of dabbled in it. But I would say, just tell me about I would just ask you deep questions and just trying to like, just trying to get a sense of like, can you talk about this intelligently, like, or are you telling me a bunch of bullshit?
Well, ask him a question.
And
that's what I'm saying.
Oh, ask
like,
you a question.
Ask him
Oh,
a question.
okay.
Yeah, like you're interviewing.
Well, tell me about some of like the pros and cons of using Elixir. Like why would you pick that language? Like, is there anything that kind of drew you to it? Like, why didn't you pick Java? You know.
Well, I started with Elixir because looking at other languages, it was the most readable in a sense through there's this thing called a pipe operator where you don't have to nest functions as arguments within each other. You could just throw in an argument in the first function and pass it down through a line practically of different functions. And it made so much more sense, and it got me into functional programming where there's only functions and bigger functions, or you could break those down into smaller functions too. So it was pretty much that, along with the ecosystem of reading different forums and different blog posts about people that use it. They're mostly senior engineers, and I sensed that it was best practice compared to looking at different Stack Overflow posts compared to JavaScript or any other language that is not so new.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or like languages that are used in corporate environments like Java and stuff like that. Like Elixir just made the most sense to me, where it's a dynamic language. You can have type safety within it as long as you declare those types within the module that you're writing out. And it's made so much sense.
That's a fantastic answer. Like, yeah, you go to an interview and you say stuff like that, like, you know, people will hire you. Elixir's a little bit tough because it's I tried to find a couple Elixir jobs, but Elixir's tough. Like generally, like most engineers that like I've met that like are interested in Elixir are like, you know, they're just playing around with it because they've just been programming for so long. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I mean that kind of stuff. Like that's a great answer. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely like you have like if you think about it, you have a reason why you did it. You have opinions on like kind of where your headspace is at. Like you're interested in functional programming, which is very much like kind of like the shift, like which is, you know, so you're keeping up with like the latest stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to love about that answer. Yeah.
Where could you hire him, or where would he learn to learn another language?
Yeah.
Where would you just theoretically?
Yeah. Yeah. So in reality, like it would, you know, since you haven't been working at it that long or whatever, maybe you just get hired as a junior level or whatever, and so you have people that are like there that can like teach you. You know, one of the things that I always love is like code reviews. Code reviews are where you learn the most about software, as people like kind of correct like or question why you made certain decisions, and you can kind of like have the back and forth with them. And so, you know, basically it would come down to if Microsoft had a large like, you know, Elixir team or something, like then you would obviously just go there, you know, junior, you know, whatever developer, or as a recruiter, if they don't have that, you know, Microsoft does C# a lot, like that's that, you know, they made that language, so they might push you into that, you know, just.
Well, that's fine for me because I just see like programming languages as tools to build systems. Yeah. And then, pretty much it. Like each language, each tool has like practically like, how do we say it? Like a headspace and ideas that flow behind it. And it's like each tool is good for that idea. Yeah. And then,
Yeah, so like you can do everything with every language, but the thing is that communities cluster around certain languages for certain things. And it's just, it kind of is like, it's like a personality thing. Like people of the same like kind of personality, they kind of just cluster. Like Python people, like they all do like, you know, machine learning, AI, database stuff, you know, like, that kind of thing. Like, Elixir people are very like concurrent, highly scalable. Like we're gonna like serve 1 million requests a second, and the system's gonna be totally fine. Like Rails people are very much like, we're just startups. Like, that's our, like, that's kind of our thing. Obviously like Rust people, they're like low level. We all do like devices and like security and stuff like that. So they have like, these different like kind of personalities. Yeah.
Speaking of personalities, when you have to deal with project managers and people that kind of come at you for requests, what are the techniques that you use to kind of like,
Okay.
Yeah. Like
Okay. All right. So you have to know what they want. So project managers, they always want the same thing. They want to know what you're working on, like what the status of it is, and kind of like your rough idea of like when it's going to be finished, right? That's what they want. They want like 3 sentences from you. Now, instead of giving them that, what you can do, instead of giving them that, what you do is you start going into all the specifics of all the, like, you basically bore them to death with details. You try and like, and what this does is it really just repels them. Like, people have tried so hard to manage me, but the thing is that I just start boring them with all these details about that they don't fucking care about. They don't give a fuck about any of this stuff. And what happens is that, they get frustrated and they come back later and they find that the thing that needed to get done got done. And so they realize that it's pointless to manage me. Absolutely pointless to manage me.
You roam free.
Yeah, so, and their time is better spent just doing something else. I've had so many people try to manage me. It doesn't work. Absolutely doesn't work.
Ronin.
Yeah.
Yeah. No master.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's do a quick one. Let's say me.
Okay.
Never done any. The only programming I ever did was in BASIC in school.
Yeah.
And I cheated.
Okay.
Because I hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually typed out what we were supposed to print out.
Yeah.
Always the thing was supposed to solve something and print it out.
Yeah.
So I actually typed it out and then printed it out.
Okay.
The answer. Right? So I know nothing.
Okay.
But I was top in my school in logic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the top score the school ever had
Okay.
in logic. And I didn't study. I didn't even read the book.
Yeah.
And I told the teacher I'm very logical.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't study. And then so logic is no problem.
Okay.
So and I know business, I know systems,
Yeah.
good
So
with people.
Yeah, it would just be another skill for you. You just learn it. Yeah.
What would be the smartest? Okay, that's a great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would be the thing if I wanted to work remote? And I think a lot of guys, they just want to do something new, and like software is like pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
It's the center of everything.
You're in the zone.
Software eats the world, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what would let's say I wanted to do software, right? What would I learn? What would language?
So it kind of very much depends on like your personality.
But you know
Like,
my personality.
Yeah.
So
And
just
so,
give me
like,
something. Like say,
I would,
Paul, I think you should do this, right?
I would say
I'm
like,
gonna do this.
like you should be in like Rails or JavaScript land just because it's like startup-y. Like you are very much, you love businesses, you love startup, you love that kind of energy, just like me. And like, yeah.
Rails or Java?
Yeah, or JavaScript, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say something like that for you just because the thing is that you can learn anything. You can do everything with every programming language. It's just like, but you might try it and decide like this makes no sense to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with Rails, one of the nice things is that like there's been a lot of stuff like it's very kind of like if you learn it, it's very guided. It's like stable. It's been around for a long time. It's kind of like boring in a lot of ways. It's not like the latest thing, but we're not like for the remote work and the type of things. I'm not here trying to do the latest thing. I'm just trying to like start a company. Like that's the most important thing to me. And I want to do it quickly. And so like, it kind of like Ruby, it kind of is in this space where it cuts out the like obnoxiously like hardcore software developers with huge egos. And that's what you want, because you want people that like can get over the fact that like there's more efficient ways to do things, and it self-selects for people that like find value in other things that are not just about proving yourself as the best engineer possible, because I don't care about that anymore. Yeah, like there was a time where I was like, I'm going to show how much better at you. I'm going to build a better algorithm. I'm going to optimize this thing. And like the thing about it is that like, to me, it's so much more important to be able to see through the BS, just really like target something that's the most important out of all the noise, fucking nail it, and then have my freedom at the end of the day. That's so much more important.
You
to
know
me.
what you want.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I know.
it makes fuck ton of sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And your life is insanely good.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say, if anybody's wondering which road to go on, I would say, personally, you made the right decision.
Yeah. For me, I've worked with like several other languages, actually. You know, it's not like I've just been doing this one language forever. But a lot of like the like material on like Rails and stuff, like they literally like, there's a lot of resources that are about Rails that just, they'll talk about the code stuff, the technology, and then they'll also in the next page they'll talk about some of the business stuff, and that mix I don't see anywhere else. I don't, because like you want, like the thing is that if you're gonna work at a company, like you should be in touch with how that company works. Like what is it that they're trying to do? They're trying to accomplish some goal. Like you should be in touch with that. Like a lot of people just want to be an employee. They want to have their blinders on. They just want to do their one thing, like on the assembly line, and they just want to get their paycheck and go. And like that's not me. That's absolutely not me.
You know what this reminds me of? Like I remember like in the 70s and 80s when music was the number one thing. Like there was no internet. It was music. Everybody talked about music all the time. That's all we talked about, music. And even travel wasn't really a thing. Not so much. You know, a few people went to India, you know, meditated or whatever, but they didn't travel like now, right?
You need,
so
travel agents.
it was travel agents. It was rich people. It was not, you know. So what was the thing? Music. So in music world, you had two kinds of people. People who made, well, let's say successful people. People who worked in the industry. Mm-hmm. There was musicians who wrote songs or who were part of a band. So they were likable guys. Like the drummer or the bass player on some random band that had a top 10 hit. They weren't necessarily that good. But they were on the band. They were in the band. Mm-hmm. And the band kicked ass. They had a good song, they had a catchy song, and it got popular, sold a lot of records. But the band was often not full of excellent musicians. Mm-hmm. But when they recorded an album, whenever they recorded an album, they would go to the studio. Now, in the studio, they had studio musicians. And those guys were like the finest musicians. They never missed a fucking note. Those guys were like insane. Those 70s and 80s guys. I mean, those guys were so tight. Any song you threw at them, you just give them the music, and they would start playing it perfectly.
If they heard it once and they can play it or something?
They just look at the music. They didn't even hear it. Okay. They just read the music and play it perfectly right off the bat. Okay. And that's what their job was. So the Rolling Stones could roll into town. They got a new song. They say, "Hey, Raj, we need you on the guitar," and you look at the music, and they just say, "All right, let's try it. Let's practice. Let's try this. 1, 2, 3," and then you're just like playing along. And those guys were so skilled. It was amazing, and it was a sad thing because they never made any money, and they never got famous, which they wanted to, right? And then the musicians were not that good usually. But they became very famous and rich and had all the girls. Yeah. And there was this thing, like the studio musicians hated the musicians. Yeah. They got jealous and everything. And then the musicians were glad they had those guys because they would, you know, often it wasn't his guitar playing on the record. It was the studio musician, right? Yeah. But it was so funny because the guy was like a hack. You know, what was it? Is it Paul McCartney can't read music? I think it was Paul McCartney. Yeah, he can't read music, you know. Okay. And so, like, there was guys like that who went all the way to the top, but they literally couldn't do the basics, you know, which is so funny. And then the studio musicians, they would be like, "Oh, those fucking musicians, you know, basically that band, you know." But the thing is, what do you want to do, right?
Luck your way to the top or be professional.
What do you want to do, right? So you're saying like be in the band,
Yeah.
get a top 10 hit,
Yeah.
screw a ton of chicks,
Yeah.
travel the world, make a lot of money,
Yeah.
have a great life, and don't worry about it.
Yeah. And maybe I'm not going for like, being the best engineer ever anymore because like my life is so much more fulfilled now,
Yeah.
rather than before when I was just grinding all the time, like, learning everything I could. Now I have room for balance.
And
Yeah.
I think too is like another thing. It might also be self-preservation because you're saving money like crazy. So within a few years, you're going to be probably not even working. In a certain amount of years, you're going to be an investor with a lot of assets.
Yeah.
So you'll eventually get out of this whole working thing.
Yeah.
So I can see that coming for you. So you're already starting to think even bigger than what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been investing in stuff too. Like, I've
No, but like a full-time investor who never works,
okay.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. 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 Eventually I'd like that.
Yeah, once you have over 10 million, that's when you start to be a full-time investor. You never have to work again, for sure.
The dividend lifestyle.
Right. Yeah, well, whatever you're investing, you might throw a few $1,000s in a
Whatever your
coin.
target is.
Yeah, you might throw something in a coin, like a risky, and then you might put in this. You might go for some triple net leases, very respectable, consistent money. You might do all kinds of things, but I can see I can see very big things for you in the future. I don't think you're going to stay where you are. You're too fucking smart.
Yeah.
And you're doing the right thing, so much that things are going to change again for you in the future and give you even better, or at least more options than even now, right? Yeah. So that is awesome. So even a guy who doesn't know any software, I could study Ruby on Rails, take a boot camp, or even just, for me, it probably wouldn't be a boot camp, probably be just hardcore study.
Yeah, you can buy a book that's like a guide. The thing that a lot of people get stuck in is that they start like kind of doing all these like tutorials and stuff, and then they get to the end, they follow the tutorial, they kind of understand it, they get to the end, and then they get stuck. What you want is, you kind of really want a book. Like, all the information is on the internet, and you can eventually piece it together. But if you want, like, to me, the fastest way is to just go through a book, because it guides you through from the beginning all the way to like actually building stuff in like a consistent thing. Like, you're not having to like piece together all these like random tutorials to get bits and pieces of stuff you didn't know you missed.
What would I be building using Ruby, working at Silicon Valley startups?
So like,
What would I be building? Like what
like
architecture?
with Rails, it's all about like building websites, like building applications. So like, like people will build like a Twitter clone or like some kind of like website that does something. And so, that doesn't mean that, depending on like what you're doing, you might need more different technologies, but like pretty much everybody, like, they need a website of some kind. Like, they need to be able to log in and sign up and access their profile, and I don't know, maybe like query through some huge database and like run a report, or like send out some mail, whatever it is. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Shaking his hand right now. Yeah, that's awesome. That is perfect. I think that right there is enough. So if you want to be free and you want to have money and you want to be, one thing, very important. I worked at a startup. So just quick story. I was helping my friend. My friend owed me a favor. So he was working at a startup, he told me. So he said, look, we need an office. Can you get me an office? And I was renting out real estate. We were leasing and selling real estate. So I went over to his office, and he wasn't there that day. It was a startup, so they were so crazy busy that the other guy was there, the president. He was the vice president. And so I said, is so-and-so here? He said, he's not here. And so I just sat there waiting. And then he was complaining. He's like, there's only like 5 people running around. And he said, I need this done. I need this done. I need that done. And I just said to the guy, I said, I can do those things. Because I speak Chinese. I could do the other things he was talking about. And he goes, you can do those things? He goes, there's your desk. We'll work out your salary later this afternoon. And I was just sitting there waiting for my friend. So later this afternoon, sure enough, they came around. They said, look, we'll give you this much money. You accept that? And this was killer money in China, killer money. So I already had a company. So this was like so weird. It's like, you got to be flexible in life. Because I hadn't gone there. My partner was working her ass off, running the company. So I just called her and I said, look, could you run the company for like 4 months so that I could work for this startup? It was a really well-funded startup that was already big in America. They were trying to get big in China. So she goes, yeah, totally. So she could run the company. So now I'm working at the startup. All these young kids, Harvard MBAs, they're all young, they're all smart. They were all Chinese American, and they spoke Chinese. But I spoke better Chinese than all of them except one. And there was only one Chinese American chick who spoke better than me. And she spoke much better than me. She was like totally native. And she was super cool too. And so me and her, we were like the ones doing stuff. So I'm working for a startup. And it was so weird for me because whenever I work for a company, we're always underfunded. We never have money. This company, zillions of dollars. I mean, zillions, like insane money. You need furniture, you call the furniture store, you order 1 billion pieces. You want new computers, you order 50 computers. You want a new office to do meetings in, you call the rental office place, you pay your $20,000 a month, you get your killer room. They didn't care. It was like basically what you need done, you get it fucking done. And if you need something, you let us know. If you don't get it done, it's your fault. Like, just get shit done. Here's what we need done. Do this. So they told me, hire 100 sales guys, train them in Chinese. So I did. I hired 100 guys, 100 motherfuckers. I did like 1,000 interviews just in Chinese, just interviewing these guys. At least 1,000 I did. And I was just going through them so fast. I was like, that guy's out, that guy's out, that guy's out. This guy make an offer. This is how fast it was. It was literally make an offer, just sit there, and I go over to you. We need an offer for this guy. And then Raj is like, okay, how much, what is he going to do? How much do you think I give him? Give him this much. How about 15,000 renminbi? Is that cool? And then you're like, that's no problem. So I come back to you. You just walked in the office like 30 minutes ago. Yeah. And I'm like, would you take 15,000? And then you're like, hell yeah. So I'm like, okay, can you make the contract? So you'd go sit over here, and then you'd sign, and then you'd be sitting near me in the desk. That's how fast it was. Because these startups, they have money, and they really value like rolling things out fast. Okay. Our goal was to get 4,000 people in China, in every city, and to open all the offices. And we only had 2 cities, Shanghai and Beijing, and only 5 people at each. So we were like, it was crazy, and it was so fun. And then they told me, we want you to do a nationwide ad project. We want you to do ads in everything, newspapers, TV, online, all the different Chinese social media. And I was like, I've never done that. Mm-hmm. They're like, basically, do you want to get fired? Like, do it. Call the TV shows. Get a fucking TV, call the TV channels, get a fucking nationwide TV thing. Negotiate a good deal. Get yourself some TV ads. We want them this long, blah, blah, blah. So I call the TVs, right? The next thing is newspapers. Get a newspaper thing. Get this, get an advertorial, get this, do that. Next thing, run a gazillion ads. Blanket every fucking newspaper with our ads, right? And so it was so fun. So I'm negotiating media buys, right? I've never done any of this. And it had to happen real fast. So